Social expectation drowns us all inside. What you have should be what I want, 'cause what I have just ain't alright. The clothes I wear, the way I comb my hair, how I live, oh, I don't care.
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Alhamdulillahi ad'afa ma hamidahu jami'u khalqihi kama yuhibbuhu wa yardahu. Alhamdulillahi ala kulli hal wa na'udhu billahi min hali ahli an-nar. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad an-nabiy al-ummi wa ala alihi wa sallim taslima. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani يفقه قولي ربنا يسر ولا تعسر وتمم بالخير وبك نستعين يا فتاح اللهم اجعلنا دعاة إليك وإلى رسولك اللهم فقهنا في الدين وعلمنا القرآن الحكيم ربنا زدنا علما اللهم آت أنفسنا تقواها وزكها أنت خير من زكاها أنت وليها ومولاها اللهم اهدنا لأحسن الأخلاق لا يهدي لأحسنها إلا أنت واصرف عنا سيئها لا يصرف عنا سيئها إلا أنت أما بعد. Discourse number 23. The topic today is what is Mujahaadah? Jahada yujahidu. What is Mujahaadah? Maulana Tanvi rahmatullah alayhi said Mujahaadah is really to give up sin absolutely. To give up sin absolutely. The opposition to the self, opposition to the nafs, being wajib. And to resist the permitted to a small degree. This opposition being mustahab. But it is a mustahab on which depends the realization of the wajib opposition. Like oversleeping, overeating, wearing nice garments, talking too much, over-socializing. These things must be diminished. Anfase Isa. This is so important. Mujahaadah is really to give up sin, absolutely. The opposition to the nafs, being wajib, and to resist the permitted also to a small degree. This opposition, of course, being mustahab. But it is a mustahab on which depends the realization of the wajib opposition. If you want to get strength and move on to that, we have to do this. Like overeating, oversleeping, overeating, wearing too much of nice garments, talking too much, over-socializing. These things must be diminished. Anfase Isa. The Maulana defined Mujahaadah in brief words and mentioned its kind. He mentioned its kinds, distinguishing the wajib and the mustahab. Meaning, Mufti Taqi Usmani Damat Barakatum comments, the general known meaning of this word Mujahaadah is mukhalafatul hawa, to resist the demands of the self, to resist the demands of the carnal desire, the low desires, mukhalafatul hawa. One's nafs may incline to do something. The heart may wish to do it, but he would crush the inclination. He would crush that and the wish and stop the nafs from pursuing it. Stop it and crush the desire. This is Mujahaadah. The Sufis call opposition to the desires of the soul, they call it Mujahaadah. This word is derived from the Holy Quran. وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا, and those who strive hard for our cause and for our sake, because one commentary is لِوَجْهِنَا. وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا, and those who strive hard for our cause, in our pathways, in our causes, lana, and for our sake. لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلَنَا. We shall certainly give them hidayat and guide them to our ways, our subul. The meaning of the word in Arabic is to toil, to try, to make effort, to struggle. The sense is applied in the current Sufi terminology to the endeavor and struggle against the nafs. But it is defined briefly as resistance to the self. Brief definition. Resistance to the self. Resistance to the nafs. Opposition to the nafs. Mukhalafatul hawa. The wajib mujahada. In some cases, opposition to the demands of the nafs is wajib, and in some others mustahab. Thus, if the nafs pulls one to do a sin, and the heart creates a demand for it, then it is wajib to resist the demand and crush it through mujahada. Suppose the heart inclines to look at a woman and enjoy. It is obligatory to oppose the inclination, and it is not allowed to submit to the inclination. It is wajib to go against the nafs. Similarly, the heart may induce one to backbite, but it is wajib to curb the prompting. Hence, it is always wajib to oppose through mujahada. Every invitation, every dawat of the self and the nafs to commit sin is wajib. And the other type of mujahada is that which is mustahab. However, if the nafs creates a desire for something that is not a sin and not haram, but something permitted, the religious elders, they say that through experience, that pursuing them, these desires which are not really haram and they are permissible, but pursuing them does take one to sin gradually. Then such desires should also be resisted. However, it is not wajib but mustahab to resist in such cases, simply because they might lead one gradually to sin. They might lead one gradually to sin, so it's mustahab. The Maulana rahmatullah alayh has said that one cannot reach Allah, and this is a statement that the whole Muslim ummah, the whole world should know this. This qawl of Maulana Thanwi rahmatullah alayh, nawwarallahu marqadahu wa nafa'ana bi ulumihim ameen. He has said that one cannot reach Allah without observing mujahada. No mujahada, forget it. You're never going to reach Allah. It is necessary because of Allah's saying. Allah himself said that وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلَنَا. Allah has made hidayat. He has made guidance to his path. Guidance to the path that will take a person before Allah. He has made that dependent on mujahada. The hidayat is dependent on mujahada. He will guide us if we resort to mujahada, without which we will get nothing, zero, zilch. And that's why many of us, ulama included, because we have left out this mujahada, we are really on nothing. Give up yourself. Give up your nafs. It is written about Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, rahmatullah alayh, the great Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, rahmatullah alayh, that he once saw Allah in his dream. وَهَذِهِ قِصَّةٌ مَشْهُورَةٌ. This is a very famous qissa, an incident. He once saw Allah in his dream. Mufti Taqi says, it is not possible to see Allah in a state of awakening in this world. It's not possible. But Allah does enable some people to see Him in their dreams. Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal alayhi rahmah asked Allah, when he was afforded the opportunity to see him, Jalla Jalaluhu, Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, he asked Allah, Kayfa sabilu ilayk? Kayfa sabilu ilayk? How is the way? What is the path towards you? Kayfa sabilu ilayk? Allah said, Utruk nafsaka wa ta'al. Leave your nafs behind. Leave yourself behind. Leave your ego. Leave your pride. Leave all of that and come. Utruk nafsaka wa ta'al. Resist yourself, your nafs, and crush its demands. When you do that, you will come unto us. The real mujahid, subhanAllah, and through this science, we really get to understand Quran and Hadith even better. And we get the nur of Quran and Hadith through the science. There's a well-known Hadith, but look at the reality of it. The Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, Al-Mujahidu man jahada nafsahu. The mujahid, the mujahideen, they fight in the battlefield. They fight to keep the kalima of Islam flying high, which is very good. It takes courage, it takes tawfiq, not talk, but action. But beyond that, the Rasul is saying, you know who is the real mujahid? Al-Mujahidu man jahada nafsahu. The real mujahid is that one who makes jihad, who struggles, who fights jihad against his own nafs. That is the real mujahid. To fight against the enemy on the battlefield is also jihad. As it is to fight against one's nafs is a battle which the real mujahid does. The wishes, desires and demands of his soul, of his self, lure him to something. They lure him to something, but he ignores them and he takes the other path. This is mujahada. Everyone who takes a step to reform himself and go to Allah has to observe mujahada. He must resist his self and take the bitter dose of corrective medicine and toil hard. And it's indeed bitter. Man's nafs, understand, my dear brothers and my dear sisters, understand the reality of the nafs, of the self. And what's the nature of the nafs? Man's nafs and self is accustomed to pleasures. That is what it lives on. That's how it thrives, pleasures. Our self, which Allah has created, the nafs, the force, and that nafs is the force that pushes us to do some task. That is so true. It is that nafs which is inside of us. It is the force that pushes us to do some task. So this is the badal of nafs. In other words, our nafs. And what is our nafs? The force that pushes us to do some task is accustomed to worldly pleasures. That's what the nafs is accustomed to. Worldly pleasures. So it hastens towards that which appeals to it as enjoyable and pleasing, because that's the nature of the nafs. This is its characteristic. It lures man to worldly pleasures and creates desires in his heart. So if man leaves it unreined and doesn't hold the reins and obeys whatever this nafs demands, then he no longer is a human being but a beast and an animal. There is no peace. If you obey your nafs and do what it demands, then there is no limit to its demands. Understand that there will never be a limit to the demands. It will never ever stop. All desires of man can never be had in this life, and therefore he can never have peace. If man meets every demand of his nafs and conducts himself on that, then he will never get satisfaction. He will never get satisfaction and peace, because after each satisfaction, the nafs will, true to its characteristic, make another demand. You can never get peace all your life if you keep meeting its demands. Never. a thirst that is never quenched. There is a malady, gluttony. It is a canine appetite in which man eats voraciously. His hunger is unending. There is another malady, dropsy. It is an unending thirst. The patient drinks and drinks water, but his thirst is not quenched. Man's desires are like that. Man's desires are like that. If they are not curbed and restricted within the bounds of the Sharia and etiquette, then they will never ever stop at any point whatever. Rather, the longing for pleasure will increase and multiply. Endure a little difficulty. This is why Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam have instructed us not to pursue the base desires. Otherwise, they will push us in the pit of destruction. فَأَمَّا مَنْ تَغَى وَآثَرَ الْحَيَاةَ الدُّنْيَا فَإِنَّ الْجَحِيمَ هِيَ الْمَأْوَى. We must chain them. They have instructed us, Allah and His Rasul, not to pursue base desires. Otherwise, they will push us in the pit of destruction. We must chain them and control them within the reasonable limits of the Sharia. We will find it difficult in the beginning, know that. And the nafs will trouble us much in the beginning. There shall be periods of depression, Nasim. You will go through depression and sorrow. And we will long for many things. Our soul, our nafs will prompt us to watch television. Watch it. It will prompt you, watch television. Understand here at this point something about television. It is the fatwa of Mufti Taqi. Some scholars, and they are entitled to their view, they have the view that television is haram. They have the view that videotaping someone, like how this program is being videotaped here now, they have the view that that is haram. Photography, they don't like it. They are entitled to their opinion, and we accept and we respect that opinion. But according to research and according to our great scholars like Mufti Taqi Usmani and the Muttaqeen, I'm speaking about people who are very pious, people who have come down from a lineage of awliya, no joke people I'm talking about. They have said that to declare television as being haram based upon photography is invalid. Invalid. It's not, he said, the photography and the imagery which the Rasul ﷺ spoke about in his time. This is not the same imagery. So to base the hurmat and impermissibility of television on photography aspect, no, without grounds, invalid. And we hold to this. Other people have their views, fine. But this is technology and research. He says why the ulama, why they dislike television is because of the contents. Some contents are such that it destroys your home, your family life, your children. Otherwise, a man could watch news. He could watch live telecast. He could watch Haram Sharif, Taraweeh. He could hear a khutbah. He could watch something beneficial. So understand that. Wallahu a'lam bis-sawab. So what he means here is that television have a kind of disease. It kind of sucks you. That you would sit down, you might sit down to watch news or something good and beneficial. But then a program come up. And then the next program, and then the next program. It pull you inside the box. And it sucks you in. And then you know what? Your whole night gone. Or half a night has gone and your whole day gone. And you're wasting time when you could have done something better. So let's understand some fiqh we're talking about here. Fatwas about photography. Allahu Akbar. And our Hazrat has great respect. Maulana Yusuf Mutala has great respect for Mufti Taqi Usmani. He says even in the field of halal and haram, hear what Mufti Taqi Usmani has to say. He has come. Who was his father? Mufti Shafi. This is a great lineage of ulama. Not joke and half-ripe ulama we're speaking about here. So, this is what he is saying. How the nafs operate. There shall be periods of depression and sorrow, and we will long for many things. Our nafs will prompt us to watch television and watch and become like, we call it, a couch potato. Huh? A couch potato. You just sit down and just only watching TV whole day. Only watching TV whole day. And if you have holidays, or you have a weekend or something, well, whole Saturday and Sunday only TV. Whole night TV. Our soul will prompt us to watch television and so on. One who is accustomed to watch television will find it a terrible experience to give it up. He will find it terrible to give it up. And he will not find rest. So there's going to be a little difficulty, but you have to endure it. But you know what? Allahu Akbar, the soul. And when he says soul here, it means that the nafs. Kullu nafsin dhaikatul maut. Inna nafsa la ammaratun bisu. Sometimes they both use for each other. The soul is really, the nafs is really a bully, you know. The nafs is a bully, and a bully is a coward. The nafs is a bully. However, so Allah has made the nafs such that if anyone resists it strongly and shows it courage and stands up to it and resists it strongly, and in spite of hardship, in spite of the hardship and difficulty, does not submit to it, then its desires begin to wane and disappear. Wane and disappear. The nafs and the shaitan are bullies, both of them. They are bullies against the weak. They dictate anyone who submits to them meekly. They will dictate to them. But if anyone makes a firm resolve and resists them stubbornly, just once, refusing to do what they say, just once, then they become meek and weak. Man will find it less troublesome to resist with every passing day, and one day he will find no trouble at all. The nafs will now be accustomed to this type of life. The nafs is like a suckling infant. Allama Busairi Rahmatullahi was a great man. His Qasidatul Burda is a very well-known poem. It is a qasida, a poem in praise of the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. One of its couplets is very interesting and wise. It says, An-nafsu kattifu, An-nafsu kattifu. The nafs, and in some narrations, nafsuka kattifu. Your soul, your nafs, your nafs is like the child, like the suckling child. In tuhmilhu, if you neglect it and you indulge that child, shabba ala hubbir radha'i, then the child will grow up with the love of suckling. It will grow up with the love of sucking that milk from the breast. If you don't wean it off and you indulge it, it will grow up with the love of sucking and getting that milk. Wa in taftimhu, but if you do fitam and you wean that child off the breast and off the milk, yanfatim, the child will definitely come off the breast and the milk. But you know what? It will cry in the beginning, the child, and make a commotion if its parents try to wean it. They pity it because it might face hardship if not suckled. So they retain its diet and they say, okay, the mother says, go ahead. And the father says, all right, the child crying, making noise and disturbance. Go ahead, give him the breast. Let him suck the milk. Allama Busairi Rahmatullah alayhi said that in that case, the child will grow into a young man but will not give up milk because its parents were coerced by its crying. They were forced by its crying and hardship into submission. Have to get up in the night and wake, and then they were forced into submission. The young man does not eat bread, good food, or regular diet, but he craves and craves for milk. However, there are no parents in the world who submit to the infant in this manner. They know that it will cry and wake them up in the night, but they wean it nevertheless, for otherwise it will never give up milk. It finds sins palatable. Allama Busayri rahmatullah alayhi remarked that man's nafs is like that, just like that child. It has tasted sin, like how that child has tasted milk, tasted sin. If you leave him as he is, and do not prevent him from committing wrong, lest he be overcome with hardship, and the nafs may find it difficult, then he will never stop sinning all his life. And the nafs, that person will continue sinning because he has left that nafs unattended. Man's soul is like that. It has tasted sin. If you leave him as he is and do not prevent him from committing wrong, lest he be overcome with hardship, the nafs may find it difficult and he will never stop sinning all his life. Peace lies in zikr. We must remember, so where do we get that peace then? We must remember that there is no peace in disobedience to Allah. And this is a general rule. Sometimes people think that we'll take a few drinks or go out and lime and have party and we'll get a peace of mind in that. There is no peace at all in disobedience to Allah. We may collect all the wealth of the world and be very wealthy, but we will not find peace in that. Look at the Western world. They have unlimited wealth, the best education, and all the doors to pleasure wide open. In spite of that, they need tranquilizers and sleeping pills to find some rest. They lack peace of heart. They cannot sleep because peace cannot be found in sin and disobedience. You could never find peace in that. Peace lies only in one thing. Allah bi dhikrillah. Indeed, kabardar, understand, no. It is only with the zikr of Allah, tatma'innul qulub, that the hearts find tranquility and comfort. They are deceived who imagine that they will find peace as they go on disobeying Allah. They will never find peace but live all their lives in a restless state. Allah gives peace only to those who love Him, whose hearts remember Him, and who engage in dhikr. Although they seem to live a life of worry, their hearts are at peace. They may face poverty and want, but their hearts are content and comfortable. If you wish to have comfort in this world, then you will have to give up disobedience and sin. For that, you will have to make a little mujahada. Allah's promise cannot be false. وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلَنَا. Have we ever heard Maulana Ashraf Ali's tarjuma to this verse? Hear it. Those who make a mujahada for us, yani liwajhina, وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا أَيْ لِوَجْهِنَا وَمَرْضَاتِنَا. Those who make a mujahada for us by forsaking the demands of their surroundings, society and soul and nafs, of the devil and the lust, and by obeying us, they make that mujahada. Then we hold their hands and lead them. What a beautiful translation of Maulana Tanvi. Those who make a mujahada for us, they make a mujahada for us by forsaking the demands of their surroundings, society, and the nafs, of the shaitan and the lust, and by obeying us, then we hold their hands and lead them to the ways unto us. Allahu Akbar. This is how Maulana Tanvi rahmatullah alayhi translated. He does not point it out. Allah doesn't point out the way from a distance, which is also guiding and hidayat. He doesn't point out from a distance. but He holds them. He leads them by their hands. The only condition is that someone should take a step forward. That's the only shart. Someone should take a step forward and stay firm and resist his soul. Utruk nafsaka wa ta'al. Allah's help will follow. Take a step forward. Stay firm. Resist the nafs. Allah's help will follow. That is His promise, which He, Allah, does not break. Mujahaadah, therefore, is to make a resolute beginning by resisting evil and refusing to commit sin. The day a man does that, he becomes Allah's beloved. Allahumma ja'alna minhum wa waffiqna. The day a man does that, he becomes Allah's beloved. And He, Allah, will lead him to His path. Make the heart worry. No problem. Make the heart worry. The first step to reform and Islah is Mujahaadah. We have to make a resolve to do that. Dr. Abdul Rahmatullah alayhi, used to recite the Urdu verses, which implied that we might kill our longings, crush our desires, but we have to make our hearts worthy of You, Allah. We have to do that. Let the longings that grow in my heart, let it ruin. No problem. The longings and desires in my heart, let it ruin. I have resolved to make my heart, my qalb, worthy of You. The heart will then become the recipient of Allah's nur. Allah's nur doesn't just come just like that. It will grow love of Allah, that nur. It will grow love of Allah, and he will not commit sin anymore. Allah's mercy will descend. In the beginning, there is always some difficulty. Know that there will be difficulty. The desires are not easily suppressed, but soon the very difficulty seems pleasant. He begins to realize that what he does is only for his master and creator. One cannot imagine its savor beforehand, but only afterwards you could understand the savor and the sweetness and taste of it. Why does a mother endure travails? Look at a mother. It may be very cold, a shivering night, a blanket warm in her, her child next to her. But oh, what's that? The child has passed urine. Shall she quit the warmth of the blanket and go out into the cold? But if she does not come out into the cold, her child will stay wet and might get a fever. So she is out in the cold and shivers, attends to the child and gives it a new pair of garments and washes the wet ones. This is no ordinary difficulty, you know. Not a little hardship. But she endures it because she has her child's good and health in her mind. She kills the demand of her nafs. She kills the demand of her nafs for that because of love of her child. Love removes pain. A woman has no child. A woman has no child at all. She has no child. She longs for one. She longs for one. She gets medical treatment, requests religious men to pray for her, uses amulets, does whatever she can for her child. Another woman tells her, stop, stop. What's wrong with you? You invite upon yourself hardship. That's what you want? It's very difficult to raise up a child, you know. The first says, for one child, I can sacrifice 1,000 wintry nights. She knew what a child meant. All difficulties and hardship are comfortable for a mother. The mother who beseeches Allah for a child really beseeches for every responsibility and difficulty associated with a child. But she does not see that as a difficulty, but as a comfort. She is surely taxed physically when she wakes up in the night to wash the child and his clothes. But she has mental solace, and she knows that she does that for the good of her child. And the solace gives her pleasure in crushing her desires. Maulana Rumi in the Mathnawi has mentioned, in love, the bitterest of things is sweet. In love, the bitterest of things is sweet. Those things that took a toil give pleasure because of love. I do that. I do that for love's sake. Let not love for Allah be less than the love for the beloved. Maulana Rumi, Jalaluddin Rumi in the Mathnawi Rahmatullah alayhi has narrated many stories about lovers in the Mathnawi. There is the story of Layla and Majnoon. Majnoon goes mad for Layla to the extent of digging for a river of milk for her sake. No one can deter him from that. No one. He says that he does that for his love and so enjoys doing it. Majnoon. Maulana Rumi said, how can love for the Lord be less than that for Layla? So man enjoys during hardship, and he enjoys during hardship. Sorry, a man enjoys enduring hardship. He enjoys bearing and going through hardship for the sake of love. Love of salary. A man is employed somewhere. He wakes up for that early in the morning. He's prepared to give up the comfort of his bed in the severe cold to be there on time. He is there all day, away from his wife and children. There are many people who go away early in the morning while their children are sleeping and return in the night when they have again gone to sleep. But they would never be willing to give up their employment. They willingly wake up early in the morning and leave their children behind because they love the salary they receive at month's end. All difficulties are beautiful for the sake of that love of the salary. If anyone falls in love with anything, then every difficulty in its part, in the path of love, is easy and pleasant. There's enjoyment in that. In the same way, there is surely difficulty in giving up sin and going against nafs, difficulty. There will be hardship in the beginning, but once a man is determined and conducts himself within the Sharia, then he gets help from Allah. After that, he will find enjoyment in that same difficulty. He will get enjoyment because it's difficulty in the cause of love. There'll be pleasure in Allah's obedience. Recognizing pleasure in worship. Dr. Abdul Rahmatullah alayhi, said to us once, the nafs of man loves pleasure and pleasure. Its diet is pleasure and enjoyment. Understand this. The diet of the nafs is pleasure and enjoyment. And that may be in any form, whatever. Real words of wisdom from Dr. Abdul alayhi rahmah. You have made it accustomed to a wrong kind of pleasure. You have wronged your nafs. You are the one to blame. You have made it accustomed to a wrong kind of pleasure. Just once, introduce it to the pleasure of obedience to Allah and His worship. Introduce it just once to that pleasure. The pleasure of leading a life according to Allah's commands. Introduce it to this type of pleasure just once. Then it will crave for this kind of pleasure. It will crave for it. I crave for ecstasy. Ghalib, the famous Urdu poet, Ghalib's poetry has a verse which people might interpret otherwise. But Maulana Thanwi Rahmatullah alayhi gives it a very interesting meaning. I have nothing to do with wine. I crave all day and night for a selfless ecstasy. What this means is that the poet is saying, that the man is saying, if you have made me an addict of wine, it's like how, it's like the nafs. You have made the nafs an addict and spoiled it in wrong pleasures and accustomed to that. Just once, introduce it to the pleasure of Allah. It will crave for that. So the man is saying, if you have made me an addict of wine, then I find ecstasy in that wine. But if you had made me accustomed to remembering Allah and His zikr and obedience to Him, then I would have had the ecstasy in that. I would have been happy with it. But it's your fault. You made me accustomed to wine. It's your fault. It's our fault. We have spoiled the nafs. Pleasure in crushing the nafs. The mujahada looks very arduous in the beginning, and a very difficult lesson is taught, that you should oppose your nafs and resist its desires. The man's nafs wishes to backbite. It wants to backbite in the assembly. It wants to say something. To resist it seems very difficult. But when he makes a determined effort, then he will get the help of Allah, His mercy and grace. Then you will receive a pleasure that would far excel the pleasure from backbiting. The pleasure that you would have gotten from backbiting, you get a better pleasure than that. Derive the savor of Iman. The Prophet ﷺ said, listen to this hadith. A man had a desire in his heart to use his eyes to the wrong ends. And who does not get such a desire? Who doesn't get it? The heart insists on casting the sight. The heart insists on casting the sight. But the fear of Allah prevents him from putting his sight there. And he kept his eyes away. It was very painful for him. His heart bled. But you know what? But in return, Allah gave him such a savor of delight of Iman that the pleasure of misusing the sight was worthless. Subhanallah. The pleasure of misusing the sight was worthless in comparison to the pleasure that he now received. This is the Prophet's promise, and the hadith is there in many books, Musnad Ahmad. This promise is not limited only to the sin of sight, but to giving up every sin. This promise is there, including backbiting, that Allah will give us such a savor and a sweetness of delight of Iman that the pleasure of the sin would seem like nothing. It includes giving up every sin, including backbiting. Just once. Stop backbiting just once. Let not the words come out of your tongue. Just once make an effort, and then see what pleasure you derive. Once man becomes accustomed to this kind of pleasure, then his love for and relationship with Allah becomes stronger. The gist of tasawwuf, as we come to the end, Maulana Tanwi Rahmatullah alayhi said that the gist of tasawwuf is that when you feel laziness in obeying someone, like offering salat, then resist it and be obedient. And when the heart hesitates in keeping away from sin, and the heart hesitates, then resist it and keep away from sin. Heart doesn't want to be obedient? Resist it, be obedient. That alone will grow a relationship with Allah. That alone will grow a relationship with Allah, which is the gist of tasawwuf and the essence of mujahada. One who conditions himself to this does not require anything else. Thus, when you crush the desires of the nafs, it now becomes the recipient of Allah's nur. The heart is there to be broken. You know why you have a heart inside of you? The heart is there to be broken. My respected father, Maulana Mufti Muhammad Shafi Rahmatullah alayh, used to cite an example. Mufti Shafi used to say, there were hakims, traditional medical practitioners in the olden days, they called hakims, still have them today, who used to grind herbs and prepare medicine of different kinds. To do that, they burnt gold and other metals. They were tonics and provided great energy. Till today, hakims make great tonics for all different kinds of things. My father used to say that if you grind your desires to pieces, to powder form, and burn them to ashes, like the gold and the minerals, they too will turn into tonic. They too, these desires that you have ground into pieces to powder and you have burnt to ashes, they too will turn into tonic. You will gain strength to establish a relationship with Allah and get love for Him, and your heart will become the center of nur from Allah. Your heart will become the center of nur from Allah. The more you break your heart, the more you break your heart and break your heart, the more it will become beloved in Allah's sight. The more you strike it, the more you strike it, the more it will be dear to the Maker. So strike your heart, break your heart. More you break it, more it will become beloved in Allah's sight. More you strike it, more it will be dear to the Maker. The heart is dear to be broken. He has made it that it may be broken, that its desires be trampled upon for His, Allah's sake. And when it is crushed, it turns into something else, like the tonic. When these things are crushed, it turns into something else. Dr. Abdul rahmatullah alayhi recited these forms of a poem. We will turn it into something else. We will convert it into what we like. So do not suppose that you are being hit by crushing the desires of the soul. Rather, the sweet taste that it will have after the heart becomes the home of Allah's love, will disclose that the taste of sins that you used to have was nothing in comparison. And this is deep, because you know what? We know the pleasure of sins, the pleasure that comes from sins and the carnal desires. Listen to the words again. We will turn it into something else. We will convert it into what we like. So do not suppose that you are being hit by crushing the desires of the nafs. Rather, the sweet taste that it will have after the heart becomes the home of Allah's nur and love, will disclose that the taste of sins that you used to have before was nothing in comparison. May Allah let us have that pleasure. Ameen. Just a little hard work has to be done in the beginning, and that little hard work is known as Mujahaadah. The Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa baraka wa sallama tasliman kathiran kathira spoke of it. He said, Al-Mujahidu man jahada nafsahu. The true mujahid is who does jihad and wages war against his nafs. Jahada nafsahu. He crushed lustful desires of his nafs for the sake of Allah. May Allah enable all of us to conduct ourselves according to these teachings. May He, Allah, save us from becoming playthings in the hands of our nafs. May He, Allah, enable us to control these desires of our nafs. Ameen. Wa akiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. I wish the whole world hears this lesson. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. نشهد ولا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك سبحان ربك رب العزة أما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Social expectation drowns us all inside. What you have should be what I want, 'cause what I have just ain't alright. The clothes I wear, the way I comb my hair, how I live, oh, I don't care. This is who I am, this is me. Nothing, everything, can't you see?